Scholar of the Madhab Hanbalis, and his positions in the Madhab are the most valued positions within the Hanbali Madhab. We know that Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah came after Imam Ibn Qudama by 100 years. He is considered the Imam of the more latter scholars of the Madhab, but the positions of Imam Ibn Taymiyyah are not the authentic positions of the Hanbali Madhab, because Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, like other absolute mujtahids, were not particularly observant of the stronger report or position within the Madhab. They usually ventured out and took positions from other Madhab when they found them stronger. So the writings, you find people like Ibn Rushd, people like Ibn Abd al-Barr, in other Madhab that have reached the level of an absolute mujtahid. Their writings are not valued inside the Madhab as the most authentic, even though they are valued as individuals, as great scholars and great imams of this Madhab. No one would doubt the greatness of Ibn Abd al-Barr within the Maliki Madhab. But Ibn Abd al-Barr's position are not always a reflection of the stronger position within the Maliki Madhab, because he was an absolute mujtahid and he had the liberty to choose positions from outside of the Madhab. Imam Ibn Qudama, even though he was, in terms of his knowledge, an absolute mujtahid, his writings were more consistent with the Hanbali Madhab. That is what he chose in his writings. So most of the time his choices are a reflection of the stronger position within the Hanbali Madhab. So this is the base that we're using, and when most of these issues will be agreed upon between the Madhab, when there are points of disagreement, I will try to point them out so that people are aware of the source of this knowledge. So Imam Qudama rahimahullah said, يجب صيام رمضان على كل مسلم بالغ عاقل قادر على الصوم. Fasting Ramadan is mandatory upon every sane, عاقل, adult, بالغ, capable, قادر, Muslim, قادر على الصوم, capable of fasting. So every Muslim should observe the fasting in the month of Ramadan, as long as he is بالغ, adult, عاقل, sane, and قادر, capable. Capable is usually very consequential in fasting and Hajj and Zakah. Capable is not that consequential in Salah, because everybody is considered capable unless you are in coma, unless you're out, unless you're unconscious. But in terms of what is required to be capable of praying, you just need to be present, you need to be here, you need to be conscious, that's it. If you're bedridden, you're still required to pray, and there is a way to pray. Even if you are quadriplegic, you're still required to pray. And for someone who's quadriplegic, they will pray with any basically indication that this is ruku' and this is sujood. And if there cannot be any indication, then they just internally pray. So prayer is there, and the qadr part is particularly consequential in Salah, in Siyam and Zakah and Hajj. The balad part, the aql part is always consequential in anything. Basically, you have to be conscious and you have to be safe to have anything required of you. The balad part, which is the adult versus the child, is also consequential in all of the requirements except that in one of the positions, according to Imam Ahmad, he considered the discerning child to be min ahl al-taklif, meaning to be liable for the religious obligations. Yet, most of the time within the Hanbali madhab, they go by baligh and not mumayyiz. Mumayyiz is the discerning child. That is a child who is about 10 years of age, who's really capable of discerning between right and wrong, and so on. So Imam Ahmad thought that he would be liable even if he is not necessarily an adult. And adulthood starts at the age of 15 for the majority of the scholars, and 17 for the Hanafi scholars, for the girls, and 18 for the boys. But for the majority of the scholars, adulthood, that's Maliki, Shafi'i, and Hanbali, adulthood starts at the age of 15, because that is when the Prophet ﷺ accepted Abdullah ibn Umar into the military. He returned him when he was 14, he accepted him when he was 15. So Umar ibn Abdul Aziz said when he heard this report that this is the distinction between childhood and adulthood, so that is in terms of the age. But all of the scholars agree that if you reach puberty prior to this, then you are an adult once you have reached puberty. And ejaculation and the growth of hair in the private areas and all of these things are the signs of reaching puberty. But if you did not reach puberty, if you're in late, the so-called late bloomer, you're adult when you reach the age of 15. So وَيُؤْمَرُ بِهِ الصَّبِيَّ إِذَا طَاقَهُ, the child should be commanded to fast when he can tolerate it. The child should be commanded to fast when he can tolerate it. So how come he is being commanded even though he is not required? So basically this is a command for the parent, the caretaker, to oblige the child, or to command the child, to order the child to fast if he can. This is a matter of recognition that these things require practice and training, and that a child should not be expected to basically switch turn the switch on once he reaches puberty, and at that time we will tell him, well, guess what, this and this and that and all of these things are obligatory, when we have not instructed him in them beforehand, or have not trained him or had him practice. So this is a command for the caretaker or the parent, and the parent is required to command the child to pray and to fast, as the Prophet ﷺ said, مروا أولادكم بالصلاة لسبع واضربوهم عليها لعشر وفرقوا بينهم في المضاجع. Command your children to pray at age 7. واضربوهم. You could translate this as beat, although it may sound a little bit too much. It means spanking. But literally it could mean beat, spank, and so on. But we know that from the implications and the commentary of the scholars that وَضْرِبُوهُمْ here does not mean, disable them. It does not mean break their bones. It just means spank them. So وَضْرِبُوهُمْ عَلَيْهَا لِعَشْرٍ, spank them if they don't at age 10. وَفَرِّقُوا بَيْنَهُمْ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ, and separate between them in beds. That is not separate between them in bedrooms, because they still could share a bedroom, but they don't share a bed. Okay, so we're commanding them to pray, although they are not, they're still not liable. They're still not liable. What if they disobeyed? What if the child disobeyed the parents? What if the child cheated or just outright disobeyed the parent? Then there is no sin on the child, and there is no sin on the parent. No sin, because the child is still not liable. He's just being commanded by his parents. He's not being commanded by God. And that's a big difference. So that it is not the command of God to the child. It is the command. God is commanding the parent to command the child to pray. So the command of a command is not a command. And that is an usuli principle. That's a principle in usul al-fiqh. So when I order you to order someone to do something, that is not a command to him to do it, unless you are only being a messenger. So I tell you, go tell, Ahmed, Hatem says, turn the light on. In this case, it is a command to him. But if I tell you, command Ahmed to turn the light on, it is not a direct command from me to Ahmed. It is a command from me to you. So you're liable. But if Ahmed disobeyed you, he is disobeying you, he's not disobeying me. In terms of Allah's commands to the parents, to command the children, that is al-amr bil-amr. That is a command to command. That is not an amr. That is not a command from Allah to the child. Yes.
What about the command of the parent to the child? Isn't that disobedient?
He is still not liable. He is still not liable.
But I'm talking about the sin of disobeying the parent.
He is not liable for anything.
For anything at all.
Absolutely. رفع القلم عن ثلاث. The pen has been lifted off of 3 people, off of them, lifted completely. It is not writing. There is no writing. There is no writing of sins for al-majnoon hatta yufiq, the insane until he regains his sanity. وَالنَّائِمْ حَتَّى يَسْتَيْقِظ, the asleep until he wakes up. وَالصَّبِيُّ حَتَّى يَبْلُغ, and the child until he reaches puberty. There is no pen. There is no writing. Yes?
So then what you're saying is that if the child disobeys the parents, the commandments of Allah that the parents are supposed to tell the child, then as far as the parents are concerned, they perform their duty. And as far as the child is concerned, the child is not liable for it until that child reaches adulthood. And after that, if he continues to disobey, then it's between the child and Allah.
Now, all of this thing, there is one person that could be disobedient in one case, which is the parent not commanding the child. Then he would be disobedient of the Prophet who said, "Muru awladakum bis-salati li-sab'a." Command your children. That's a command from the Prophet. Command your children to pray at age 7. Spank them if they don't at age 10. If you, as a parent, disobey that command from the Prophet, then you're liable. It's sinful. But if you, as a parent, command the child to pray and the child does not pray, command the child to fast and the child does not fast, no one is liable here. Because you have done your part and the child is not liable, whether or not he does what he's commanded to do. Because this is a parental command, not a divine command to the child. So Allah, out of mercy to the child, did not address the child with this command. Because Allah could have, right? So Allah could have addressed children, discerning children, to pray or fast. The Prophet could have addressed the discerning children and told them, you need to practice, pray or fast. Then that direct address would have made them liable, but Allah did not want them to make them liable, so Allah addressed you, did not address them.
And one follow-up question, and especially when you were saying about physical spanking or stuff. Here, let's say for my particular case, if I'm little...
Can you raise your voice so that the sisters...
Okay, the question is that how far would you go in so-called physical spanking, so to speak? If, from my personal perspective, if I just take a small gesture, and to me that's spanking, would that be acceptable? Versus it has to cause some pain or, of course, like you said, not breaking bones and stuff.
Well, first, usually I like to joke about this, and I used to say, consult your lawyer first. But after you consult your lawyer, then the Islamic teaching in this regard is that anything that could be done non-violently should be done non-violently. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, "ما وضع الرفق في شيء إلا زانه." That gentleness is never used or regarding anything except that it beautifies it. It is never used in any affair except that it beautifies this affair. So the use of gentleness is always given precedence. Now, if gentleness did not work, and if exhortation, maw'izah, did not work, and if rebuking did not work, and if abandonment did not work, and if withdrawal of privileges did not work, and if non-physical punishment did not work, then you escalate this at the end to the physical punishment. If there is a child that is basically responsive to facial gestures or eye gestures, then you should not even talk to that child. You just look at them, and that's it. It's done. So a person that would spank a child that is responsive to eye gestures is a crazy, violent person. And that should be clear cut. So if your child is responsive to simple gestures and you go ahead and beat them, you're sick. Yes?
As far as commanding them to pray, so just telling them to get up early, but not 4 o'clock in the morning, 7 or 9 a.m., just tell them to get up. Whether they're responsive to waking up or not, they're the obligation of the parent.
And I don't think that this is age 7, but at age 7 you're basically instructing them in prayer. It is getting them ready. This continues to go up until age 10 is when you become more assertive. So to wake them up for Fajr at 4 o'clock in the morning at age 7 is not required. But you're teaching them how to pray, you're taking it easy. This is from 7 to 10. This is room for us to get them to that point where at 10, we will tell them, wake up for Fajr. And yes, it is to tell them to wake up for Fajr. Because that is commanded. That is basically commanded. Now, if they are resistant, then you do want to use a little bit of physical gesture,
Wake them up.
Huh?
Wake them up.
To wake them up, yeah.
Sabi is from 7 to 10.
Sabi is all the way up to bulugh, but between 10 and bulugh, there is another word that could also be used for the person, which is murahiq, pre-adolescent. Murahiq is pre-adolescent. That is used for people between 10 and puberty. But they are still sabi until they reach the age of puberty. But at any rate, with regard to fasting in particular, there is a hadith of Rubayya bint Muawwidh, radiallahu anha, may Allah be pleased with her, in which she told us that on the morning of Ashura, the Prophet ﷺ sent to the villages of the Ansar to instruct them to fast. فكنا نصوم ونصوم صبياننا فإذا جاء أحدهم جعلنا له اللعبة من العهن حتى يكون الفطر. So Rubayya said that we used to fast and make our kids fast, and if one of them became hungry, we used to make dolls of wool for them to play with, basically a matter of distraction, until it is time for breaking the fast. Next is, then when do you start Ramadan? You start Ramadan according to this Hanbali position in one of 3 cases. The completion of 30 days of Sha'ban, this is a matter of consensus. the sighting of the crescent of Ramadan, this is a matter of consensus. For having clouds on the night of the 30th day of Sha'ban, preventing its sighting, and I want you to forget that position because it's a weak position within the Hanbali madhab. It is not the Hanafi or Maliki. This is a peculiar position of the Hanbali madhab that happened to be particularly weak. So only remember the first two: the completion of 30 days of Sha'ban, the sighting of the crescent of the Hilal. So why did Imam Ahmad say for clouds on the night of the 30th day of Sha'ban, knowing the extreme adherence of Imam Ahmad to the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Because the Prophet sallallahu in some of the narrations said فَقْدُرُوا لَهُ. The Prophet ﷺ in the narrations that you find in Bukhari and Muslim and so on about when to fast, he said صُومُوا لِرُؤْيَتِهِ, fast when you sight it, وَأَفْطِرُوا لِرُؤْيَتِهِ, and break your fast when you sight it. فَإِنْ غُمَّ عَلَيْكُمْ فَقْدُرُوا لَهُ. So if it is cloudy, the word فَقْدُرُوا لَهُ could mean in Arabic estimate for it, and it could mean in Arabic, no, tighten. It could mean calculate. Could mean calculate. Could mean estimate, calculate.
The argument they use.
Yeah. So it could mean this and it could mean that, but it could also mean tighten for it. Because qadr is to tighten. What does it mean here, to tighten for it? Imam Ahmad understood this to mean to basically tighten Sha'ban or constrict, limit Sha'ban to 29 days. Because to him, he said, well, I have doubt whether this is Ramadan or not. It's cloudy and I can't see. So to him, he said, fasting one day of Sha'ban is better than breaking your fast on one day of Ramadan. Now it's a condition of uncertainty. I can't see. So Imam Ahmad said to fast one day of Sha'ban is better than to break your fast on one day of Ramadan. But there are other reports in which the Prophet ﷺ explained what he meant by فَقْدُرُوا لَهُ. Explained what he meant by فَقْدُرُوا لَهُ. And he said, فَأَكْمِلُوا عِدَّةَ شَعْبَانَ ثَلَاثِينَ. Complete the month of Sha'ban up to 30 days. And this is reported by Bukhari and Muslim from Abu Hurairah as well. In addition to this, what shows the weakness of this particular position within the Hanbali madhab is the hadith that is reported by Sunan Abi Dawud, Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah, and Nasa'i from Ammar ibn Yasir, in which he said, من صام اليوم الذي يشك فيه فقد عصى أبا القاسم. Whoever fasts the day of doubt, which is in this case the 30th day of Sha'ban, where there is doubt, clouds, and we can't sight the moon, has disobeyed Abu al-Qasim, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So forget about this particular position. This position is weak, and it is not the position of the majority of the scholars. These first two are by consensus. All of the madhahib say the completion of 30 days of Sha'ban, the sighting of the crescent of Ramadan, that is when we are commanded to start the fast. Then, yeah.
Shouldn't it be 29th night?
No, it is the 30th night.
So if there's clouds on the 30th night, what do we do?
The 30th night of Sha'ban. The 30th night of Sha'ban is the 29th of Sha'ban.
Okay.
The 30th night of Sha'ban is the 29th of Sha'ban. So on the 29th of Sha'ban in the evening, that is the 30th night of Sha'ban. Because the night precedes the day.
Some of the groups that calculate. Some of the groups that calculate, they end up canceling their date. Sometimes I remember one year
Well, no, not get into this, because this particular issue with calculation is just like a big ordeal. But we'll cover it. Just just 1 second. Look. So وإذا رأى الهلال وحده صام. If he sees the crescent alone, he should fast. Okay? فإن كان عدلا صام الناس بقوله ولا يفطر إلا بشهادة عدلين ولا يفطر إذا رآه وحده. If he is trustworthy, people fast based on his statement, but should not break their fast at the end of Ramadan except on testimony of 2. He should not break his fast based on his citing alone. So at the end of Ramadan, 2 are required. In the beginning of Ramadan, 1 is required. Is this a position of agreement between the scholars? No. Why is it not a position of agreement between the scholars? This is the position of the majority. This is the position of the majority. But according to the Hanafi scholars, they will agree here with fasting based on the testimony of 1 if it is a cloudy day, because they say if it is a cloudy day and someone saw it, then he has, like better visual acuity and it is cloudy, so it is very possible that the rest of the people did not see it because it was not clear to them. But if the day is not cloudy, the Hanafi scholars will require al-jam al-ghafir, a large group of people to have sighted the moon in order for this sighting to be a valid sighting to them. So what is al-jam al-ghafir? Then they have another disagreement over the definition of al-jam al-ghafir. Some of them said 2 or more, and some said more than this. And the prevalent position is that whatever number of people that will give the judge that will make the decree whether to fast or not, the ruler, the judge that is in charge of this, will give him certainty that they did see or sight the moon. So the majority of the scholars will accept the testimony of 1 person. Why would they accept the testimony of 1 person when we know that in Islam usually it is 2 people that are required for the testimony? Because Abdullah ibn Umar, as Abu Dawood reported, sighted the moon when the rest of the people did not sight it, and he came to the Prophet ﷺ and said to him, I sighted the moon. So the Prophet صام وأمر الناس بالصيام. So the Prophet fasted and commanded the people to fast. In another report, the Prophet ﷺ, it was a Bedouin man, in this case a Bedouin man, came to the Prophet ﷺ and said to him, I sighted the moon. So the Prophet ﷺ said to him, asked him 1 question. And this shows you the beauty of Islam. He said to him, أَتَشْهَدُ أَنْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَأَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ? Do you testify that there is that La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah? And he said, yes, I do. And the Prophet ﷺ said to Bilal, قُمْ فَأَذِّنْ بِالنَّاسِ لِيَصُومُوا مِنَ الْغَدِ. O Bilal, go and declare to the people to fast tomorrow. The beauty of fasting on the basis of the testimony of 1, when it is possible, because we're not looking for the moon on the 28th of Sha'ban, because that is not possible. We're just talking about the 29th, which is the night of the 30th of Sha'ban. The beauty of fasting on the basis of the testimony of 1 is it gives enormous power for the individual. It honors the Muslim as an individual. It makes the Ummah follow the testimony of 1 Muslim, and the only criterion is أَتَشْهَدُ أَنْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَأَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. He's Bedouin, he is not known to them. Bedouins who have less knowledge, they have many things. But despite that, the Prophet ﷺ and his companions and the Ummah fasted on the basis of his testimony, which honors the individual, the Muslim as an individual, and shows the value of the Muslim individual to the rest of the Ummah. This is like giving asylum. You know that giving asylum in Islam is given to individuals. Certainly, things are more complicated nowadays. Countries will not accept this and so on. However, the way we could make this justifiable nowadays is to say that we should honor the wish of the Muslim if there is no reason to refuse the asylum. But it will have to go through, the due process, and he would have to apply to the authorities. Give an asylum, like, to someone, a non-Muslim, from outside of the land of Islam. This right has been given to individual Muslims, Islamically. That is because of the value of each Muslim as an individual and a member of this society. The whole society honors your word as an individual. Now, don't say that we will do away with this. We don't need to do away with this. There is a way always to apply, there is a way always to honor those teachings without causing chaos. And then we should say that this individual should tell the authorities that I wish to give asylum to this person, and the authorities should grant asylum to this person if they do not see harm from this. That's as simple as that. Anyway, but the fact that we start the fasting on the basis of an individual testimony by one Muslim shows you the value of each individual in this society, as long as they yashhadun an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, they have the kalima. Okay. And so we said that the Hanafi position is that a large number of people will need to see it. If we want to tighten the criteria and we use the Hanafi position, then that is a legitimate position of a legitimate madhab. And in this case, in order to avoid making up your own opinions, we just take that one. That is a valid school, and their opinion, whether or not you think it is the stronger opinion. But in these matters that require unity and that warrant compromise for unity, then a valid opinion from one of the most recognized madhabs within Sunni Islam should be an acceptable compromise. You're saying that it would be a little too much if we take the testimony of anyone, anywhere, from any time. Well, that's okay. If you want to take the Hanafi position, I will disagree. I will tell you that I don't believe that this is the stronger position, yet I will yield and I will compromise, because that is a very excusable compromise in the sight of the Sharia, because it is the position of mujtahid imams. And when it comes to the position of the mujtahid imams, there is a unanimous agreement between the scholars that the positions of the mujtahid imam should not be condemned by non-mujtahid, and should not be basically disapproved of by non-mujtahids, the public. Okay. Next, this is a little bit of a technicality here, but we will move to the next. Basically, some people think that, some people wonder, why is it so difficult? Why is it loaded with this much controversy? Because it really is somewhat difficult to sight the moon on the first day of Ramadan. The crescent would be very subtle, and it would be very hard to sight it. We're talking about conjunction. This is conjunction. This is the point of conjunction, which is called in Arabic iqtiran. Iqtiran is when the moon, which is here, is right in the middle between the sun and the earth. This is the earth, this is the moon, this is the sun. So if you draw a line from the center of the earth to the center of the sun, and this line goes through the center of the moon, straight line, from the center of the sun to the center of the earth, and this line goes through the center of the moon, that is the point of iqtiran or conjunction. This is when you can never see the moon. impossible to see the moon. Because all of the reflection that is coming from the light of the sun is going back in this direction. How do you see it? Once the moon starts to move away from that line, once the moon starts to move away, the slightest movement of the moon away from that line is called what? Wiladatul Hilal, the birth of the moon. The moon is born. The crescent is born. Once it moves just like the slightest distance away from that line, the moon is born. And it takes a fraction of a second to be born because it moved from that line. Will you be able to see it then? No, you can't see it then. How, how much time will it take for the moon after the birth to be sightable? That is when astronomers disagree. And some people say all the way down to 4 hours, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 14. And there is much disagreement. The most acceptable numbers by the majority of the astronomers will be anywhere from 9 to 14. So that is the birth, and that is the sightability, which is important for you to know, to understand the controversy that will result from this. So the moon goes around the Earth in about 29.5 days. During this cycle, there is a moment when it comes in line with the sun and Earth, and between them. This moment is called new moon birth. This moment is called conjunction. I'm sorry. The new moon birth is a second later, less than a second later. Because that point exactly where it comes in the center is conjunction of Tara. And less than a second later, it's birth, wilada. At this moment of the sunlight falling on the moon cannot come to the earth, and the moon face to the earth is completely dark. Once it is born, then a few hours later it will become sightable. So now, what are the various opinions concerning the beginning of Ramadan? So traditionally we have two opinions only. That is اتحاد المطالع and اختلاف المطالع. Global sighting is اتحاد المطالع. Local sighting is اختلاف المطالع. What does that mean? اتحاد المطالع meaning that anyone who sees the moon anywhere on this planet that is Muslim, that is a valid sighting for the rest of the Muslims on the planet, as long as they share part of the night. As long as they يشتركون في جزء من الليل, they share part of the night. That's reasonable, right? Very logical. Because if you don't share part of the night, then, so if you see the moon in Hawaii, if you sight the moon in Hawaii, how could people in Pakistan fast with this sighting? It is already like 10 o'clock in the morning for them. They don't share part of the night. So اتحاد المطالع is basically global sighting, and اختلاف المطالع is local sighting. So what is the division of the madhahib concerning اتحاد المطالع and اختلاف المطالع? First, where did the position come from? Where did the disagreement come from? The disagreement came from two ahadith only. One of them is the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, "Sumu li-ru'yatihi wa aftiru li-ru'yatihi." Fast when you sight it and break your fast when you sight it. The scholars who said it is one sighting for all of us Muslims on the planet, they said the Prophet never addressed a particular ethnicity. When he spoke and addressed us, he addressed us Muslims. Sumu, who are those people that are being addressed here? Sumu, you Muslims. Fast, you Muslims. So that is the position of those scholars. They say that this is an address to the Muslims to fast upon the sighting by one Muslim. This is the position of the majority traditionally, by the way. This is the position of the majority. And I will tell you which madhahib. the other hadith, the other hadith here is the hadith of Qurayb. When Qurayb was in Damascus, and he started the fasting early with Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. So Qurayb, one of the Tabi'een, he was in Damascus. At the beginning of Ramadan, he started the fast earlier with Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. So they were able to see the moon on the 29th of Sha'ban, which is the night of the 30th. So they started the fasting. Then Qurayb traveled to Mecca. Qurayb traveled to Mecca. And when he reached Mecca, he found them to have been delayed by one day. So he was doing his 14th day of Ramadan. In Mecca, they were doing the 13th day of Ramadan. He walks up to Abdullah ibn Abbas, and he says to him, we fasted with Muawiyah on Saturday. And Abdullah ibn Abbas tells him, but we did not sight the moon, so we would continue our fast until we sight it or complete 30 days. So Qurayb says to Abdullah ibn Abbas, so the sighting of Muawiyah is not good enough for you? And Abdullah ibn Abbas, and this was a little bit sensitive, in the history. So Abdullah ibn Abbas said to him, no, هكذا أمرنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Thus we have been commanded by the Messenger of Allah. Basically, to fast when we sight it and break our fast when we sight it. So that would be an argument for people with local sighting. So Abdullah ibn Abbas in Mecca is not taking Muawiyah's sighting in Damascus. So the scholars that uphold this position of local sighting, they would say this is clear cut. How do you run away from this? So the scholars of global sighting, they would say, had Abdullah ibn Abbas known of Muawiyah's sighting before they started Ramadan, he would have taken it. So the condition here is that you know it before you start Ramadan. So that is why in terms of their means, they said in a radius of whatever a fast force could cover overnight to tell the people within that circle. So they said that this hadith is just telling us that if we did not know of their sighting and we started Ramadan, then it will not apply to us retrospectively. That's it. It does not apply retrospectively. Had he known that Muawiyah cited it prior to starting Ramadan, he would have taken the position of Muawiyah. So I support the global citing position. Does that mean I will not take the local citing position? Absolutely not. In these matters, unity takes precedence over your favorable position. This is a position of Mujtahid Imams, and this is another position of Mujtahid Imams as well. So who took that position of global citing? Malikis and Hanbalis, yes, absolutely. The Malikis only said that the only condition that the Malikis added to this position is that it does not apply to people who are too far away from each other, like Khurasan and Andalus. Khurasan is contemporary Iran, and Andalus is contemporary Spain. So the Malikis said it does not apply to people who are too far away from each other, like Khurasan and Andalus, because to them, they don't share part of the night. So this is the Maliki and Hanbali position. This is the Shafi'i position. Local citing is the Shafi'i position. Where is the Hanafi position? It is both. Because the earlier Hanafi scholars, and that is the former position according to Ibn Abidin, which is the verifying scholar of the latter Hanafis, the earlier Hanafi scholars were in support of this position, global citing, like the Malikis and Hanbalis. So this was early on, this was the position of the Hanafis, Malikis, and Hanbalis, and this was the position of the Shafi'is only. Some of the earlier Hanafi scholars took that position, but that was not the dominant position within the madhab. Then came Imam al-Zaylai, who is a big figure within the Hanafi madhab, but from the latter generations, and adopted that position, which is the position of local sighting. It continued to be the lesser position within the madhab than the unpopular position within the madhab, but it started to gain a little bit more value because a scholar of the size of Zaylai adopted it. Then came the contemporary Hanafi scholars from the subcontinent in particular, not all of them, but a good number of them, and they took that position of local sighting. Some of them made it to official positions within their respective countries, so that became known as the Hanafi position, when in fact this was the position of the majority of the Hanafi scholars, particularly the earlier generations, the first 400 or 500 years of Hanafi scholars. So the division would be here Maliki and Hanbali, here Shafi'i. The Hanafis will be both, and then some of them will be with global, some of them will be local, and it depends on which Hanafi will be talking to, and who are his teachers, who are his, which books does he read, and things of that nature. But at any rate, these are both traditional positions of mujtahid imams that reach the level of ijtihad. Whichever position you favor personally is your favorable position, but this is not an individual practice. This is a collective practice of the ummah that will require unity. So you compromise your favorable position for the sake of unity whenever there is another position by imams that reach the level of ijtihad, and this is a matter of universal application. The entire ummah needs to use it, needs to agree on a position, then you compromise your position. Now, then we got into the issue of calculations. And calculations could be used in two different ways: supplemental to the sighting or independent of the sighting. Supplemental is when you're dependent on the sighting. Calculations will be used basically to tell you where you could sight at which angle you could sight it, supplemental. In addition to this, some of the scholars, earlier and latter scholars, approved of the use of calculations to deny the sighting that is impossible. Basically, if you sight the moon before its birth, is it possible? No, it's not even born to be sightable. So it did not depart from, the line of conjunction. So how could you sight it? It's impossible. So some of the earlier and latter scholars approved of using calculations to deny a sighting that is impossible. If the moon is not born, then the sighting was impossible by means of certainty. It really is impossible. Whatever you saw, this is not the moon. It was not born. So then, this became the position, by the way, the use of calculations to deny the sighting that is impossible became the position of the Fiqh Assembly of the Organization of Islamic Conference, the Fiqh Assembly of the World Muslim League, the Assembly of Muslim Jurists of America, the European Council for Fatwa and Research. So 4 large fiqh assemblies agreed to take that position. Basically, they are using citing, but they're saying that it will be contingent upon scientific possibility. If it is scientifically possible, if the moon is scientifically possible to be cited, then we will accept that testimony. If not, we will reject it. Now came another position into the slew of positions, which is the independent use of calculations. Basically, you use calculations to establish the beginning of the month irrespective of the sighting. So I could tell you that Ramadan in 2064 will be on this particular day. Will make that possible, right or wrong? Absolutely. If you calculate, you could project, a few hundred years in advance. So, so that position has been adopted by some of the contemporary scholars. So that you understand what's happening around you. ISNA adopted that position, and their scholars adopted this position. It is understandable that people from the West will be more inclined to adopting that position because of the convenience. Because you will be able to tell the government for 50 to 500 years in advance, this is when Ramadan falls, this is when the Eid falls, this is when Muslim kids could go out of school for the Eid vacation, and you could be able to tell the Muslims for 500 years, this is when you need to apply for a vacation to celebrate Eid with the community, etc., etc. So because of all of these conveniences that everybody appreciates and everybody knows they matter, it's not frivolity, they took that position. The problem with that position is that historically, traditionally, it has been rejected by Orthodox fiqh, Orthodox Islamic fiqh. It is the position of one of the tabi'een, Mutarrif, and it was said that Mutarrif said that the calculator, not others, may act upon his calculation because he has certainty in the beginning of the month. This position was later basically accepted by Ibn Qutayba, Ibn Surayj, Shafi'i scholar, and because it was introduced into the Shafi'i madhab, some of the latter Shafi'i scholars, such as Subki, supported it, and then later on, this position came back on the surface when a great Egyptian scholar, a great Egyptian muhaddith, wrote a book to support this position. His name was Ahmad Shakir. He is the sheikh of some of my mashayikh. There is no denial of his greatness. But the position is considered to be pretty unorthodox traditionally. It is counter to the four madhahib, and consensus has been reported by several scholars to basically disapprove of that position and to confirm that citing is required and not calculations. Just one second. The Muslims in general, what do Muslims in general need to do? First of all, I invite you to appreciate, recognize, and appreciate the beauty of the whole discourse. Because the whole discourse is a sign on our reverence for Ramadan, on our glorification of Allah and His symbols. The fact that we go through all of this anguish, the fact that we disagree and we argue and what does it indicate? It indicates that we are an ummah that is concerned with its religious commitment. We are an ummah that is committed to what is right. We are an ummah that is committed to the orthodox practice of its deen. Whether you are on this side or that side, if you're saying calculations, if you're saying anything, but you are basically you're vested in supporting your position, it just indicates that you care and you have concern for the ummah, for the deen, for this, for that, which is that you will glorify Allah, you will glorify His symbol and His sha'air. So recognize this and enjoy it and appreciate it, and don't let the matter escalate out or get out of control. So the Muslims in general, this is an issue of political will. The Organization of Islamic Conference can work on this collectively to figure out something for all of us. It's political will. It is nothing that you could do as an individual. This is for the higher ups, in all honesty. This is not an individual practice, this is a collective practice. So this, for the Muslims in general, I think the Organization of Islamic Conference would be entrusted with this. And not the Organization of Islamic Conference, the presidents and the kings. I'm talking about their Fiqh Assembly, because they have a Fiqh Assembly that belongs to the OIC, or Organization of Islamic Conference. Because if you entrust the kings and presidents with this, you'll be in big trouble. The Muslims in the West, what should we do? Basically, we should try to decrease the controversy by limiting the controversy to big recognized national organizations, and having those national organizations agree to agree or agree to disagree. And whether they agree to agree or agree to disagree, it would be fine. And then local masajid will try, what we want to do is to contain the issue. Just to contain the issue. Local masajid should follow some national organizations. You follow AMJA, you follow the Halal Committee, you follow IGNA, IGNA does not have a particular position. They decided to basically tactfully and strategically, they chose to have no position so that they don't get into the headache of that sort. And they just refer their respective communities to the local authorities. But we converge it and we let the national organizations agree on agreeing or disagreeing. For you as an individual, just wait for the declaration that comes from your own community. Wait for the declaration that comes from your own community. If you're a Wali person, Masjid al-Wali person, wait for the declaration that comes from Masjid al-Wali. Masjid al-Wali and MCNJ and MCMC and the Islamic Center of East Brunswick, they decided to have a committee so that Central Jersey would be largely, not predominantly unified, which is a good thing. If that declaration comes, then you act upon it. But that is basically where the controversy is coming from. And I know that I went past my time, so I'll just stop here. We didn't get to speak about some of the other issues. Any questions?
There's some extra time before the next speaker.
I took 15 minutes beyond my time because everybody came late. Yes.
Just please consider shift.
Continue until the next speaker shows up.
Yani, even on the show.
Yeah, take your time,
Yes.
we are in no rush.
Questions? The last position, the holders of the last position, which is totally based on calculation, how do they coincide with the hadith so they are getting
To basically depend on So Brother Salman is asking how do they reconcile the last position with the hadith of the Prophet in which he said, fast when you sight it and break your fast when you sight it. They say that ru'ya could be used in terms of certainty also. That ru'ya, well, here you will depart from the obvious implication of the word ru'ya, because ra'a means to see, physical sighting. Ra'a could also mean, but that is not basically al-zahir, which is the obvious explicit implication from ra'a, but of the abstract meanings of ra'a is to become certain of. And they say that the calculations will make us certain of the beginning of the month. So it will be like we cited. Keep in mind that I did not deny the greatness of the scholars that accepted that position. I just said that the position itself, if you basically examine it historically, traditionally, within Islamic scholarship, Orthodox Islamic scholarship, is an esoteric position that we have ijma'as reported against it, or consensus reported against it, several ones reported against it from different madhahib, and it is a position of a very small minority. Mutarrif is mutarrif, is like 200,000 times greater than me. But we're just talking about the position. You know, Ibn Surayj is one of the greatest Shafi'is of the earlier generations, but we're just talking about the position. He said Ahmad Shakir, the one who brought it up, rahimahullah, Allama Ahmad Shakir was a great muhaddith. He is the sheikh of my mashayikh. His greatness is unquestionable, but I'm just talking about that position. And I believe that position, in terms of its strength and weakness, if you put it in the scale, it will be very difficult to support. The one thing that I just wanted to cover is this particular one, because a lot of people they ask about it, and there is a lot of controversy over it. So I just want to cover this, and in case you have any other questions, we could go back to it. But this particular position here, the third type of people that can break their fast in Ramadan, the pregnant woman and one breastfeeding, if they fear for themselves, they break their fast and make up. And if they fear for their fetus, they break their fast and make up and feed one poor individual per day. This is the Hanbali position. Where do the other madhahib disagree with this position regarding this last part, if they fear for their fetus? So the Malikis and Hanafis, or Hanafis and Malikis, if you want to take the Hanafi or Maliki position, don't look at this one. Read everything above, and this would be the Hanafi and the Maliki position. And then you don't read this. Shafi'i and Hanbali, then you read this. But so the Hanafis and Malikis, they do not distinguish between a pregnant woman that is breaking the fast out of fear for her own health or her fetus. Whether this or that, the Hanafis and Malikis will say you break the fast and you make up. The Shafi'is and Hanbalis said, if you're afraid for yourself, you break the fast and make up. If you're afraid for your fetus, you break the fast and make up, and feed one poor person per each day that you broke the fast. Now we don't have something that is traceable all the way to the Prophet concerning this issue, otherwise we would have not disagreed, right? If you have something that's clear and traceable all the way to the Prophet, there would be no room for disagreement. But we don't have this. We don't have like a statement from the Prophet. The Quran does not talk about the hamil and the murdi, but the Quran talked about the sick. وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ يُطِيقُونَهُ فِدْيَةٌ طَعَامُ مِسْكِينٍ. And on those that could fast, however, with hardship, that is the meaning of yutiqunahu, that fasting would cause them hardship, the expiation is to feed one poor person, an average meal, your average meal. So, according to the form of Zahir, each pregnant woman or breastfeeding woman will need to make up. Because the form of Zahir, they said that وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ يُطِيقُونَهُ, this became applicable to people that have chronic disease that is not expected to get better, to go away, or senile people, elders, old age, because it is not expected that you will get younger. So in this case, you feed and you don't make up, because when do you make up? If you're like 75 years old and you can't fast because you're senile, next year you'll be 76, you'll not be 74. So you just feed one poor person for every day that you break your fasting, and there is no makeup for you. If you have a terminal disease, not terminal disease, but a chronic disease, unexpected to improve or get better, then you're like that senile person. But if you have a transient sickness, then it is the agreement of all the scholars. It's a matter of consensus for those who have a transient sickness that they may break their fast, but they will have to make up for the days that they broke their fast. All of this is consensus. Now, comes this particular issue of the hamil and murda, the pregnant and the breastfeeding woman, and the four imams or the four mazahib, they treated her as someone with a transient sickness. So they said that she will break, and then that she will break and make up, because she will not be hamil forever, or she will not be breastfeeding forever. However, there is, outside of the four mazahib, there is the position that has been reported from Abdullah ibn Abbas and Abdullah ibn Umar that they do not need to make up. All they need to do is to feed one poor individual for each day they broke the fast. This is the position of Abdullah ibn Abbas and Abdullah ibn Umar. But keep in mind that the other scholars that said that they would have to make up knew of that position. How did they justify it? The Shafi'is and Hanbalis said that Abdullah ibn Abbas and Abdullah ibn Umar, it is reported in Abi Dawud from Abdullah ibn Abbas, قال إن أفطرتا أطعمتا. If they break their fast, they should feed a poor individual for each day. So they say that he said that, we agree, but he meant in addition to making. So they say that he meant in addition to the makeup, they need to feed as well. So if you want to be on the safe side, to begin with, if you want to be on the safe side, you need to first figure out if you need to break your fast or not. Because not every pregnant woman needs to break her fast, particularly in shorter days, particularly in agreeable climates. And she doesn't have any problem, and she's well nourished, then she will not have a problem fasting. In this case, if she does not experience hardship beyond the ordinary hardship of fasting, if she does not experience any extraordinary hardship and she has not been advised against it by the physicians, then she should fast. And that is by the agreement of the scholars. So Hamil al Murda, pregnant and breastfeeding is not an automatic license to break your fasting. It is basically your Hamil al Murda and you need to break your fasting. Whether it is because of some hardship that you already experienced or some hardship that is anticipated, that you were told about by your physicians, that you should not be fasting because of this or that or some purpose that was communicated to you by your physician. So that is the first thing. Then, if it was decided that you will need to break your fasting, and you broke your fasting, and you want to be on the safe side, then that is the safest position. Because all of the scholars in this case will approve of it. Because even the Hanafis and Malikis, if you make up, and in addition to making up, you feed one poor person per day, no Hanafi will be upset with you. No Maliki will be upset with you. Because all they ask of you is to make up. If you do this, and in addition to this, you feed one poor person, everybody will like you. But if it becomes such a hardship for you, which is not really unexpected, because particularly with Muslim women and Muslim women, they will have a few kids in their course of 30 years, 30 some years, and if you have like 4 kids within that time period, just 4 kids, we're not talking about some like record numbers, but if you have 4 kids, that is 12 years. If you're going by the book, and you're breastfeeding for 2 years with every child. If you're not going by the book, if you're not going by our book, if you're going by the American Academy of Pediatrics book, and you're feeding for 1 year, which they, by the way, revised this, and they said up to 2 years is encouraged. But if you're going by the classical teaching of 1 year of breastfeeding, that is still 8 years. 8 times 30 is 240 days that you will need to make up. If that becomes an issue and causes hardship, and you decided to take the position that has been reported by Abdullah ibn Abbas and Abdullah ibn Umar, that you could feed only and that you're not required to make up, then it is hoped that you will be fine. It is hoped that it will be acceptable for you to take that position. Any questions from the sisters about this? And I'm done in 90 seconds.
Should we cover the fourth so we can finish it?
Huh?
The fourth? Can we cover the fourth?
This?
Fourth thing.
The 4 types of exemptions?
No, the fourth. Just did the third. Just did the third. So we finish all 4? No. We have one more, right?
We have 1 minute.
The second, the first.
Okay, basically, so breaking the fast in Ramadan is permissible for 4 types of people. The first is the ill person who would be harmed by fasting. The second is the traveler who is permitted to shorten the prayer. For them, breaking the fast is preferable, and they should make up, and if they fasted, it would be valid. This is a consensus. This is consensus of the scholars. So if you're ill or traveling, by agreement, breaking the fast is permissible and preferable to take the rukhsa, the exemption that Allah gave you. However, the preferable here is not a matter of consensus. Permissible is a matter of consensus. Preferable is controversial. But Umar ibn Abdul Aziz's position seems to be the strongest. He said, if fasting causes you hardship, then it is preferable to break the fast. If fasting does not cause you hardship in your travel, then it is preferable to fast. Okay, now, the second type, the menstruating woman and one having postpartum bleeding. They break their fast and make up, and if they fasted, it would not be valid, and it would be haram because they would be disobeying Allah. And that is consensus also. So, by agreement. And there is no disagreement over the haid and the fasad, the menstruating, and the one with postpartum bleeding needing to make up. All of them say she will need to make up. They will need to make up. To feed is not acceptable for those. To feed only is not acceptable for those. And the third, we spoke about the hamil wal murda, the pregnant and breastfeeding. And number 4, which is the fourth type, is the one incapable of fasting for old age or an incurable disease. Then he or she should feed one poor individual per day. That is also by agreement. What if you do not make up? What if you what if you're this person here, you're ill or traveling and you break your fast and you do not make up? Then you'll add to the makeup the kafara. You do not make up until next Ramadan. So you failed to make up from here until next Ramadan came, and so more than a year you did not make up. You add to the makeup that you will need to do after the next Ramadan. You add the kafara, which is the expiation, which is feeding one poor person for every day that you failed to make up within the year. Within the year. What if you die? If you die before the next Ramadan, you should be fine, inshallah, as long as you are intending to make up. If you die after the next Ramadan, then so more than a year passed from the time you broke the fast and you did not make up and you die. If you die in this case, then we look at why you deferred the makeup. If you deferred the makeup because of incapacity, such as disease or some other reason, inability to make up, then you're forgiven, nothing. That's it, done. If you failed to make up, despite the fact that you were able to, then your waratha, your awliya, your heirs will feed on your behalf and also will fast on your behalf. Feed and fast on your behalf. Feed and fast on your behalf. What if you break the fast in Ramadan without an excuse intentionally? We have weak hadith in this regard that, two weak hadith in this regard. One hadith said, فَلَنْ يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ صَوْمُ الدَّهْرِ وَإِنْ صَامَ. Then his fasting will never be accepted afterwards. This is a weak hadith. Because tawbah tajubbu ma qablaha. Repentance erases all the previous sins. So if you repented, if you asked Allah to forgive you and you repented from breaking the fast on this day where you had no excuse, then inshallah your fasting afterwards will be accepted. But should you make up for that day? That is when the scholars disagree, because there is another hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ said, من أفطر يوما في رمضان من غير عذر لم يقضه صيام الدهر. Whoever breaks the fast on a day of Ramadan without an excuse, the fasting of the his entire lifespan will not make up for it. Fasting throughout his life afterwards will not make up for it. This hadith is stronger than the previous one. Because this hadith is not talking about your fasting will not be accepted afterwards. It is talking about that fasting will not make up for that day, because that day is gone and it will never come back. It's gone. So some of the scholars said that you still make up, you still do the makeup, and some of the scholars said that don't worry about making up because you ruined it. The Hanafis and Malikis added to the makeup, the Hanafis and Malikis added to the makeup the kafara of having intercourse in Ramadan. So even if you break the fast by eating or drinking, for the Hanafis and Malikis, your kafara will be the kafara of having sexual intercourse in Ramadan. What is that? You fast 60 days. You fast 2 months in a row. And if you can't do this because you're incapable, physically incapable of doing it, then you feed 60 people. But the Shafi'is and Hanbalis said that this applies only to breaking the fast by jima' or having sexual relations. And why did the Prophet ﷺ say this? And why is this there? Basically, it's like a fence. Because that desire is more compelling for the average person than the desire to eat and drink. Right? It is more compelling. So in order for you to be scared away from breaking or violating the sacredness of Ramadan, in order for you to be scared away from this fence was erected for you. Then you will know that if you do this, you will have to fast 60 days in a row. And for most people, that is enough deterrent. As we said before in hudud in general, we said in hudud in general, the hudud or the punishments in Islam are not meant for punishment as much as they are meant for deterrence. That is why there is no had for eating pork, because you don't need that much deterrence. It doesn't smell that good anyway. So, but there is had for fornication, because you need deterrence, because of the compelling or overbearing desire. So you need to be, so the hudud are not used for punishment. The kafarat are not used for punishment. They're used more for deterrence. That's it.